Oh, baby, no. Take me back. Won't you give me a second chance? Hello, folks. Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU, here for another Legacy video. And today, Matthew has challenged me to take an extra turn in Legacy with Second Chance. So this is an oldie. I don't know that I can call it an oldie but a goodie, but it's an oldie. So, during your upkeep, if you have 5 or less life, sacrifice Second Chance and take an extra turn after this one. So let's kind of break this down. In order for this card to kind of matter, you have to be able to make it to 3 mana, have another turn cycle, and be able to capitalize on that turn cycle, which probably is going to mean having a clock of some kind in play that you can hopefully finish the game with in a single attack step. In addition to that, your life total has to be relevant. Now, it can be relevant because your opponent is lowering it, or it can be relevant because you are lowering it. Lowing it? Yeah, because you are lowing it. Verbs. So this is different than most extra turn effects for a couple of reasons. Number one, the extra turn is not immediate. So an extra turn spell, a time warp or whatever, can be countered while it is on the stack. Whereas Second Chance can be destroyed by a Boseiju, Abrupt Decay, whatever, while it is in play. Additionally, most extra turn spells don't have this harsh of a restriction on them. But anytime after WotC started getting more aggressive with the mana cost of extra turn spells, usually like 5 is okay for a standard legal set. When they started cheating below that, they normally put a pretty big restriction on them because extra turn effects can be pretty oppressive, especially if you start looping them. So one of our primary challenges today is that a lot of times your life total goes from 20 to 0 real quick. A Goblin's deck might kill you in 2 attack steps, which never leave you at anywhere below 5 life. A Reanimator deck might put a giant creature into play, and then another giant creature into play, and again, your life total is never below 5. And then there's combo decks that are just going to kill you directly from 20, with an Emrakul attack, or by storming off. We are probably going to have to lower our own life total, which means that if we're going to do something with this card, it's probably on the back of a Death's Shadow shell, where we use things like Shocklands and Thoughtseizes and Reanimates to lower our own life total. So here's the deck list for today. I took a relatively stock Death's Shadow deck list and made just a couple of changes to slot in a few copies of Second Chance. Note, I fully do not believe it is viable to run 4 copies of this card. Most of the time when I do a brew challenge around a card, I want it to be 3 or 4 copies so that the card comes up. But the problem here is that Second Chance is only good in a very narrow window. And I need lots of other cards like the Street Wraiths, the Shocklands, the Death Shadows, the Reanimates, the Snuff Outs, and then some target like Grief or Troll of Khazad-dûm to reanimate in order to create the window for Second Chance. And if I don't play enough cards that actually impact my own life total and enough cards that actually, defend my ability to not die to opposing decks, then I'm never actually going to get to use this, which is what left me, which is why I settled on 2 copies of this card. The main deck doesn't have too much spice as long as you've been following that Stalactite Stalker is increasingly becoming more and more played in Legacy. This card is relatively scary and real, and sometimes can even become a removal spell in a deck that often doesn't have that many removal spells. Sideboard is just kind of pretty solid, full of good stuff. Note that sacrifices have to be made to put the Second Chance in. So, while the 4th Grief maybe belongs in the main deck, or maybe I'm supposed to trim 1 Street Wraith instead, I've relegated one of those to the sideboard to go alongside a Thoughtseize. So if you need any cards, please consider checking out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save 5% off your next order. And if you are looking for a chance to meet me, I've got 2 opportunities for you other than MagicCon Chicago. On March 15th, I will be at Game Night in Columbia, Tennessee for a Legacy FNM. And on March 16th, I will be there for an awesome CEDH event for a Time Twister. They're flying me out. It is going to be a really cool kind of 2-day thing. So if you want to meet me and get some tokens and get me to sign some stuff, that is a great opportunity to meet me. All right, let's battle. Hey, Phil from the future here. The best round of this league is round 4. It's not close. It contains one of the most interesting stack battles I have seen in a very long time. Okay, so you remember what I was saying about second chance being like incredibly situational in terms of timing? This is the sort of thing that I was talking about. I can only do 2 damage to myself. I can do 4 damage to myself if I daze. I can do 6 damage to myself if I daze Watery Grave, daze Watery Grave. But I think I just mulligan this one. Yeah, this is fine. I will get rid of the Murktide Regent for now. I'm a little afraid of getting wastelanded. Delta, sure. So is Arkan on fair or unfair polluted Delta? I think I will do this. And I'll Stalactite Stalker, which will start scaling up immediately. We're seeing some movement. I will absolutely daze if given the opportunity to. Okay, that was just a fetch. Are you just like Lorien revealing? The same general concept. Getting a basic. Joke's on you, Arkan. I've got a Swamp Walker in my deck. There's an Animate Dead that I will happily daze. There is a daze on the daze. I probably Force of Will pitching Brainstorm. And I can't fight back any further from here, so if Arkan has one more counterspell, he wins this war, unfortunately. I don't think I'm on main deck Brazen Borrower. That's not great. 6, 12, 18. 3-turn clock. My Watery Grave doesn't change that clock. Oh, right, the -1. The Watery Grave does change the clock. How am I winning? Snuff Out doesn't kill this. Yeah, I don't have Brazen Borrower game 1, so this is just a 3, 2, 4 turn clock that I can never stop. I deal 2 this turn, Arkan's at 16. I get 2 more attack steps. Stalactite Stalkers don't get there. Murktide Regent probably doesn't even get there. I don't know, maybe we work towards an extra turn spell. I say that non-ironically. Let's hit some land drops. I could take 1 land drop. Next turn I can play double Stalactite Stalker. Hit for 2, 16. Hit for 7. I was sitting here and thinking about it forever. This seems like it's at least moving in the right direction. I do have the shameful put 3 Stalactite Stalkers in front of it if I have to. Ugh. Yeah, that's rough. Second chance is off the board now. I am at 9. Fetch. What about a Giant Death Shadow? I can't search for it and play it anymore. Yeah, that Wasteland was rough. Like, playing a Death Shadow was a way out. Maybe I should have fished more aggressively for Death Shadow and shuffled away the other Stalactite Stalkers. Yeah, but I just don't think I'm on any outs. Other than triple blocking, which has just been taken off the table. I also don't have enough mana to activate these as removal spells. Draw the 4th one? Grief doesn't do it. And I can't use a Ponder to get into both land and another creature, at least not one that stays on board. So, I'm definitely interested in Brazen Borrower. I'm probably going to go up 1 copy of Grief here. It's reasonable to hardcast, and it makes my early reanimates better. Specifically because I can target my opponent's trolls, in addition to just Grief doing Grief things. I think I'm going to keep Second Chance in. Push sometimes does stuff. Thoughtseize sometimes does stuff. Probably have to play the pushes to respect like an opposing Bowmasters or equivalent. I wonder if I like trim Forces or Days here. This is a fair enough matchup where I can like maybe go down on forces when I'm on the draw, forces when I'm on the play, dazes when I'm on the draw. Note here, I'm keeping Snuff Out in respect of cards like opposing Murktide Regent, even though it's not going to kill a lot of the things that Arkan can bring to the table. Let's just Underground Sea this time. I do not want to get wastelanded. My hand operates very well as long as I just stay on a little bit more mana. The Reanimate's awkward. The Wasteland is awkward. I'm going to take the Reanimate. Can't take the Wasteland, unfortunately. It was the one thing I didn't want to happen. And I imagine Arkan just fires it off on turn 1. Seems relatively free with a Ponder in hand to do so. Never punished. Land pass holding up Snuff Out. Unfortunately, since I get wastelanded, I don't get to deploy Orcish Bowmasters before this Ponder comes down. Ooh, the Ponder is not coming down. That potentially means that Arkan has drawn Force of Will. I could grief pitching Snuff Out here. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to pass the turn. Sure. That's a troll. That is an Animate dead, which is unfortunately occurring. Don't have a lot to say about that. I think I'm going to go ahead and just use my mana here. I know that Arkan has another Bowmasters. I might end up just griefing that Bowmasters and pitching my Snuff Out to keep this Orcish Bowmasters more protected, as it's kind of a big deal right now. I don't have a lot of instants and sorceries in my graveyard for the purposes of Murktide Regent, which is a little rough. Let's dismiss this. Let's take Orcish Bowmasters out, I think. I could take Douthie Voidwalker. I'm still going to take Bowmasters. I can produce a 4/4 flyer right now. That's honestly probably fine. Ugh. Right. We've already used one of those. I'm going to take the grief out of my graveyard so that it is not a reanimation target. The Arkan can attack me for 5. I can attack back for 6, but it's really 7, and I have a little more damage to the dome afterwards. Do I block? I lose 2 of these for the troll, keep an orc token in play. Yeah. That doesn't feel great. I think I'm going to do that. Then I'm not just like beholden to immediately find a removal spell for the Douthie Voidwalker. Sure. I can wasteland that at some point. I guess I should have considered doing it with Douthie Voidwalker on the stack. But I have things like Daze to consider that make me not want to do that immediately. Alright. Let's do this. I don't care about a Brainstorm hitting the bin for Douthie Voidwalker purposes if I play a Brainstorm. Ooh. I can reanimate Troll, take a bunch of damage, and then follow up with Death Shadow the next turn? That sounds fine. Let's attempt the reanimate. Fine, wastelanding this, attacking for 1. 16. So now I have an attack for 7, followed by an attack for lethal. See if Arkan can put another threat into play. That's unfortunately another threat. So now the Death Shadow that's on top doesn't outclock Arkan anymore. I need something like a Brazen Borrower, which means I am shuffling. I will not shock. That doesn't do it. I get attacked for 6 and die. And like Arkan always has to double attack because he's basically always dead to the troll next time. Yep, alright. I will concede. GG's. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and honestly, they're just the best at what they do. If you need to keep your deck lists online, this is the way to do it. They have all sorts of different viewing options. You can condense that text if you like things to be tight. You can make them visual grids. You can put them in stacks. You've got all sorts of different ways to kind of view and visualize your deck lists. And they also have some really cool functionality, like allowing you to see playtest hands and even fully playtest your decks. So check them out. All right, I've kept my opening hand here. I've got a couple of ways that I can play this hand. I'd kind of like to draw another black card so that I don't have to give up this Death Shadow to do Grief Reanimate nonsense immediately. Ooh. This is scary. This is probably a Storm deck of some kind. The Death Shadow is a lot less important now. Don't turn 1 me. I have so much interaction in hand. I'm too young to die. Oh. Okay. So this is 8 goblins. Is this beatable? My opponent has seen Misty Rainforest. I need to decide right now whether or not I think I can win. All my opponent knows right now is that I am a blue deck. Orcish Bowmasters is good here. Stalactite Stalkers, Death Shadows are good. Losing life to Reanimate Grief is significantly less good here. I think sometimes I can draw my way out of this. I think things have to go pretty much perfectly, though. Take a look-see. A Stalactite Stalker. So I get hit 8 down to 11. I can play Death Shadow and Stalactite Stalker. Block 2. Go to 5. I'll need to draw another creature, which this hand does not innately do. Has a Brainstorm to help. I'm going to try to do better than this. Force of Will is not better than this, unfortunately. But like a Bowmasters on its own takes out 3 Goblin tokens, which is huge. But in the short term, I'm just getting punched. Down to 11. Force of Will, that's not great. Okay, am I live? Play Death Shadow, block. Takes 7, go to 4. 7 goblins remaining. I draw Bowmasters, 6 goblins remaining. 3 blocks, go to 1. I am still live, but it's pretty much Bowmasters. Might be exactly Bowmasters. Another turn or so down the line, and we could be, looking at second chance. We are not there as of right now. Sure, that's an indicator of Beseech being in my opponent's deck. Beseech 2? I have days for that if it happens. It's actually not bad. I can just return the Underground Sea. Oh, fuck. So, there's 3 copies of this. So, like, I can Daze Force and counter all of these, but then I'm not live. If I let one of these resolve, I'm at 2. So I'd need to counter 2. And Bowmasters isn't an out anymore. Yep. Alright. GG. Would it have been the Bowmasters? It would not have been the Bowmasters. Good on opponent for just going for it on turn 1. Alright, so Powder Keg is our Ratchet Bomb that can nuke my opponent's artifacts or Goblin tokens. That's good. Null Rod is great. Grief Thoughtseize are fine. Surgical is playable. Force of Negation is playable. Worst card in the deck here is Snuff Out. That's gotta go. Second Chance is really slow here. I think I cut Street Wraiths before it. Second Chance is at least blue. 1 cut, keep 1 second chance. That's probably reasonable. I should cut the second chance, but I would like to at least do the thing once this video, so let's keep 1 in. This is a medium hand. I think I'll keep it. I have a Daze for if my opponent plays something critical on turn 1. Otherwise, I am pondering for more disruption, and I can sit on a Powder Keg or play and crack a Powder Keg relatively early in this game. I don't think I am going to immediately use the fetch land. Well, if I don't think I need Force of Will, I can take both of these block cards and then Grief Reanimate next turn, which I think I am going to do. Let's hope a Daze is enough to get me through turn 1. I guess I can Grief immediately and not give my opponent the chance to play out a land, and then Reanimate the following turn. Feels safe enough sitting on Daze, but I didn't consider that for long enough. Alright, so my opponent takes a card. Alright. Yaw. Grief. Pitch Death Shadow. Trigger. Oh, that is a redundant hand. It is lacking in mana. I can take the LED and the Opal and just leave my opponent with 3 4-drops. But I think I'm just going to take double Beseech the Mirror and have Powder Keg for Empty the Warrens. I think that's my approach here. Reanimate. Take the other Beseech. Pass turn. I can fetch 15, go to 13, go to 12, go to 10, and get a Death Shadow in play next turn. I think that seems reasonable. Or no, sorry, it's Force of Will on top of my deck. Fetch the Death Shadow. I am good with that draw. I don't let my opponent know about the Powder Keg immediately, though. I hold that in hand because I would like them to empty, because I actively beat that. But if my opponent thought seizes me, I do have to daze or Force of Will as is appropriate. Yep. 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 Land drop. Empty for all of my opponent's resources. A reasonable 8 goblins, which is just not going to be good enough. A Death Shadow. Sure. Watery Grave. Shock. Powder Keg. Racket. Feels good. Opponent can crack their bauble. They see my Death Shadow. I was about to play that anyway, so that's fine. I think I just shock to speed up my clock here, given that I do still have a counterspell backup here. This puts my opponent to 14, and I've got 6, 12, 18, 3-turn clock. I can maybe turn it into a 2-turn clock. If I draw something like a Bowmaster. All right, it's just a land drop. Fantastic. That's not super what I'm looking for. I guess fetching a tapped land speeds this up to a 2-turn clock. Let's do that. I don't think I will do any more damage than that, though, to myself. All right, cool. No changes for this game, I don't think. I don't think something like Hydroblast is good enough here. Okay. I don't think this hand is good enough. It has a Surgical for turn 1 interaction versus Beseech the Mirror specifically, but otherwise doesn't do anything. This is a similar hand that is significantly better if I get my first turn. Because like I have clock that scales, I have 2 pieces of disruption. I think I keep this and get rid of the Brainstorm, and I'm just kind of like locked in on this aggro plus 3 pieces of free disruption. Also, there's a good chance that this just beats a small number of goblins on turn 1, if that's what my opponent is mulliganing for. Alright, my opponent is on 5. See what they've got going on. That is a Carpet of Flowers. That's okay versus Wasteland, but is not doing my opponent any favors right now. Sure. Okay. Understood. My days gets worse with a carpet around. The wrong timing for that card. Am I shocking? Got reasons to with this, but I think this is more likely to pitch to a Force of Will style card in this specific game. I think we are on double Stalactite Stalker and then Wasteland this Bayou. Black off carpet. That's fine. Okay, we're just chilling. My opponent wants to draw with this. Maybe should do it immediately. Because I am a Bowmaster's deck. Hit. Deal 2. In combat, Wasteland Bayou. Mana is not necessarily the choke point here. And we'll scale up our threats. Like, despite mana not really being the choke point, I still probably need to do that. I probably have a 3-turn clock in play. So this is 5. Then at minimum, it's 6 for the following turns. So 6, 6, 5 is 17, assuming that things kind of go well. Okay. My opponent has 1, 2, 3 initial mana, which does not get them to beseech. Alright, seems like we're chilling. I would like a harder piece of disruption than what I have going on, I say as I draw another daze. I'm going to attack for 5. Opponent goes to 12. I'll drop a Stalactite Stalker. Unfortunately, these aren't scaling up, and unfortunately, I don't have a second land for daze number 2. Daze number 2 is weird because like it would give my opponent a second carpet mana in a lot of cases. Note that like I did have a weird line of like just blowing surgical and dazing my underground sea back to my hand, but then that like shuts off daze offensively. I don't really think that's the route to go. That is a brainstorm. I think I am happy to cast. I have some cards such as Grief that I could want to play on my own turn. I could draw a Wasteland. That is something that could be relevant. Death's Shadow. Death's Shadow and Second Chance both don't seem relevant. I think I'm just going to pass the turn without playing Watery Grave. This gives my opponent an extra carpet mana and makes my... I guess it makes my days the same. I guess it kind of makes the dazes the same. This is a little weird. I'm just going to ponder and shuffle unless the third card down is like Force of Will. I just played a land, so this doesn't work. Bowmasters, not the best. I might surgical and bounce a land. The surgical is still useful. Not used to this carpet of flower days dance. All right, there's a bauble. And an Infernal Tutor. So this is, I think, currently fine. So if my opponent casts Beseech the Mirror now, I just double daze. Okay. Daze 1. Daze 2 with 6 power on board. Alright, we win the match there. I'm not sure that I navigated that game the best, but scoreboard. Oh, I haven't done this. I haven't done this in a hot minute, YouTube. Oh, what a draw. What a draw. Just honest to goodness, Reanimate Street Wraith on turn 1. I don't think I've done that in 5 years. I've got really good tempo elements to back this up as long as they are relevant. A 3/4 body is a little tough to remove. That's fine. I will snuff that out. But I'll Wasteland first to better play around days. So, yeah. Ow. Alright, I am at 9 with a threat in play. My Death Shadows are going to be very big in a red-based Delver matchup. But I don't have any manipulation here. My Force of Wills are probably for threats. Am I griefing to stop something like a Bowmasters from coming down and just going fully in on the tempo? I think so. Oh man, it feels so weird to go in on a Street Wraith. Reanimating this is much worse than... Oh. Okay, I think I just let that happen. And then I just make my opponent use the mana to put whatever that is on the stack. Alright, we've got some movement. That's second land and Brainstorm. Brainstorm's fine. And are we playing a threat? Might just be straight blue-red Delver. I think it's possible that's been picking up a little bit. Just targeting themselves. Sure. This one targets me. I'm not going to fetch to deny information here, because there's some instances where this does become a shock land still. Not a lot, but some. Well, we all know this is coming. This helps to keep something like a Murktide Regent out of play. Is my Street Wraith gonna get there? Also, we don't have enough mana for Whoozy What's It as of right now. Second chance. Return clock. Street Wraith sends its regards. Down to 5. Alright, there is another land. Nice. Send it. So any connection from a creature is going to be lethal at this point, right? So I think this is just an Underground Sea rather than a Watery Grave. Because if my opponent just plays something like a Murktide Regent, like I still just have lethal on board. Alright, we did not get confirmation of a second color, but it's possible that that didn't work the way that I wanted to. Let's go to this screen. But it is possible that my opponent just didn't fetch a swamp because I had Street Wraith on board. Like, that is something that would make sense. I'm not really sure that things are going to change a lot. Like, I'll probably play Brazen Borrower. Fatal Pushes are probably good. Grief is probably fine. Hydroblast is probably fine. Second Chance is probably reasonable here, honestly. I'm on the draw. My dazes aren't the best. And get rid of those for some amount of removal. And then I decide how deep on Force of Will I want to go. I expect the games to be more interactive than that on average, and Force of Will is not going to be the best against like my opponents like Dazes, Spell Pierces, those sorts of cards that they can leverage better when they are on the play. Like, I still probably need some amount of Counterspell / Hand Disruption to respect Murktide Regent. The honest answer is probably like play a couple of these in these slots, but know what you're here for. I also should have boarded in the island, but I didn't. I think this hand is a little lacking, but I'm going to keep it. Opponent's mulliganing aggressively here. I imagine just is like due to not having the proper number of lands, more so than anything else. All right, what do you got? I think with double Fatal Push, I let that resolve. My opponent might get some amount of value, but Fatal Push hits Dragon's Rage Channeler, and it does not hit Murktide Regent. And I would like to save my Force of Will for something more important, or maybe fighting harder over the DRC if we get to that point. I'm a little vulnerable to opposing Wasteland. I think I probably am going to need blue mana though, so just going to accept that and go for the Fatal Push. It resolves. Now, my Reanimate on DRC is a thing that I can do. Not a thing I'm overly excited to do, but it is a thing I can do. And again, we'll try to use Fatal Push to answer these. I probably Wasteland to turn off Daze and then Fatal Push that. Snuff Out, though. I've got options. I'm always Wastelanding this Volcanic Island. I think, again, respecting Murktide Regent, I'm just going to Fatal Push the things that I can Fatal Push and pass the turn. I'm not going to be the best. Ooh, don't love that. I'm not going to be the best at utilizing DRC. That is what it is. Snuff Out is not currently on. So I probably Force a Will the next threat my opponent plays. Alright, I top deck the land first. So yeah. Yes. Am I reanimating? Or pondering? I think I'll reanimate. It is not the world's most exciting reanimate, but I have 2 free spells and a ponder as my third type. And at some point, hopefully I put a creature in there. Cool. Ponder. Surveil. I'm going to put that in Graveyard. That's a replaceable card. And that turns this into a 3/3. Ooh. Yeah. No shuffle. Land, combat. 3? Opponent's at 16. I'm going to aggressively fetch here, I think. I don't think Second Chance usually becomes live, but there's a non-zero chance, and I would like to get to the point where where shadows are playable. That's fine. Are you taking out my Wasteland immediately? No. A Grief. That's interesting. Send it. 11. I can Grief pitch Snuff Out here. And then it becomes harder for my opponent to play something like a Bowmasters. Bowmasters feels very beautiful. I think I just keep things that help me deal with Murktide. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to float mana because my opponent will just change phases. Does that matter? I don't think that matters. I don't think it's that wrong to fight there. But I think I just have better options. Alright, opponent goes to 8. I can Grief Pitch Snuff Out to make Bowmasters more likely to resolve, and then put Bowmasters into play with Force of Will backup. I think I am into that. What's going on over there? Price of Progress. Got it. Pyroblast, DRC, Force. Take the creature. I'm just going to immediately Bowmaster. I'm not even going to let my Grief leave the stack yet. And then we'll pass the turn. I have 5 damage in play, backed by a Force of Will. The Force of Will potentially just gets taken by Pyroblast, but mana is a bottleneck here. And it seems like my opponent is playing straight blue-red. I think the Price of Progress is an indicator of that, as secondarily is the fact that we just haven't seen any black mana, and it's turn 8, and like over the course of 2 games as well. Alright. I don't have an initial threat. I think that's fine. We're hoping that Wasteland is good or at least reasonable in this matchup. Yeah, I would be fine drawing 2 of these. And I think I put the Bowmaster in my hand and keep the Reanimate. Or if, I get griefed or something and I lose my Bowmaster, that's fine. I'll play Bowmaster and ping that. Sure. My opponent doesn't crack it immediately, which is probably because they want to use it to manipulate their draws with Delver. Now that I know I'm against another aggressive deck, I think I'm just going to find an Underground Sea. And let's take out Delver. Can reanimate a Delver in a little while if I want. I'd like to go to town on my opponent's lands and try to keep Murktide Regent out of play if possible. We're a decent bit away from that happening, but it's a thing. Attempt Wasteland. My opponent will probably Bowmaster in response, which I will Force of Will and then Reanimate. Yeah. Cool. So land down, Reanimate, target a Bowmaster. And we got 2 of these bad boys in play. I get to attack for 3. Opponent's at 16. Alright, opponent has more lands. Another Bowmaster would be rough. Not anymore, it wouldn't. What a draw. And I think I'm going to Daze bounce a land so that I don't get dazed back. That feels very important here. That was honestly just disgusting. Sending in for 4. My opponent keeps running lands off the top, or from their hand. Like, I could start running into Murktide Regent as being a very, very, very real card. I have apologized to my opponent as I play another Bowmaster. This is rough. They're at 7. My opponent plays a Murktide Regent. It's currently a 3/3. That was pretty savage. So what am I doing? Probably similarly to before. Fatal Push, Brazen Borrower, Island, Grief are kind of things that I'm thinking about. I think I was taking my Street Wraiths out for the 4 pieces of removal. How good is the Island, actually, if I don't have a basic Swamp to pair with it? Significantly worse. Maybe this is just for Blood Moon matchups. I think I want all my Dazes when I'm on the play. Let's board in an extra mana source and be good with that. My hand was just, honestly, the Stone Cold nuts. No? Feels like I want to wait till turn 2 to brainstorm, and I wait till turn 2 to brainstorm Bowmasters is a blowout that I can't stop. This one's fine. I think I'm just going to put the Shadow back in my deck and keep all the blue cards. Alright. Cantrip or Threat? Threat. I don't think I want to fight over that right now. Like, I can. I would love for that not to flip, and then I get to just naturally fight over it with something like a Bowmaster like I did last game. I'm gonna get C and Ponder. I think I'm behind this game in terms of, like, Bowmaster math. So I don't think I want to be keeping a whole bunch of cantrips here. Alright, so my opponent draws their card to get a clean Delver flip. And Delver flips to Ponder. I'm going to be under a real amount of pressure. I think I force pitch Murktide. It's very bad for me if they fight back and then this is stuck in my hand. Yep. But my hand's very bad right now, and I really do need Brainstorm. Alright. Please no natural 1-drop on top. And that's a lot to ask. Yeah. I imagine that I'm dead most of the time now. Like, Brainstorm just is a free flip. Or, like, free counterbalance counter. So, like, this is not free. I'll play this tapped. Don't have creatures in the yard for Reanimate. It's probably also not resolving through Brainstorm Counterbalance. So I can Grief and try to mess with that. But this flipped Delver is doing some work. And about the only thing I could have done differently is gone for the turn 1 Force of Will into Daze, which I didn't feel like was a good thing to do. Alright. Oh no, I made a mistake. I have 2 Underground Seas, and 1 is in my hand, so this is a shock land currently. Which I don't want. I think if this resolves, or if this doesn't resolve rather, I'm dead. Okay, so that resolved. I don't think I can play the Grief since I missed my fetch opportunity. So I'm going to do a very, very sad Reanimate on Delver in an attempt to Lightning Bolt. Fuck. That's such a good card. Yeah. I think I'm done so from here. Like, my opponent is at 18. Whenever they draw a Bowmaster, I am just dead to board. Yeah. The Bolt plus that is lethal. I'll go to 4. Fetch a Watery Grave out of deck. Reanimate doesn't really get me there right now. I'm going to cast a Grief to see if I get to see another card from my opponent's hand, and we'll call that good. All right, Lightning Bolt to my face. And a Brainstorm. All right, we see a Wasteland. I am dead. GG's. So now that I'm on the play, I can probably think about not Force of Willing, and instead like doing some mix of Hydroblasts and Daze. This leaves me a little softer to Murktide, a little better against DRC and random Lightning Bolts and such. Again, should realistically cut these, but trying to live the dream for you all. Alright, this is easy mulligan. I don't have any colored mana. This is a keep. I gotta figure it out. So Grief pitches a black card. I probably Reanimate Grief. Am I then keeping another Reanimate? I think I'm getting rid of Hydroblast. From there, it's a bit harder. If my opponent has a creature, I just get to like Reanimate into Reanimate very quickly. But I think Shadow ends up being really strong this game. Oof. So I can take Force of Will to resolve Reanimate. Yes. Reanimate on Grief, just immediately go to 13. And I probably... Is the Murktide Regent scarier than the Delver? Depends. I take the Delver. Murktide Regent potentially gets stuck in hand for quite a few turns. All right, there's Tarn. That's not bad. Not quite good, but it's not bad. Makes pyroblasting some of my random spells less reasonable. All right, opponent does not have more lands. Not interested in Grief giving up Death's Shadow. I am very close to putting a shadow in play. So we'll call it a turn. There's a secondary land. And there's a pause. What is this pause? Bowmasters? Alright, opponent went into the tank for a little while. So what's happening? A Molten Collapse. This is interesting. So I know my opponent has 2 dazes. So if I daze, getting rid of Watery Grave, I can attempt to force a daze back. Things just start getting a little weird with the opposing Murktide Regent. I also have Wasteland. This is quite complex, because I can choose to take my opponent off of a color and not let them pick up the appropriate land, or I could just fully play around the card Watery Grave, hope to draw another land, drop Death's Shadow. I think I am interested in always taking my opponent off of the red land. Pyroblast is known. I think my opponent is considering dazing their own spell. Like, from their point of view, their out might be put this Murktide into play next turn. And they might be considering daze my own Molten Collapse to save this Volk. Weird game. Ooh. Oh, so that is Surgical Extraction on Wasteland. Daze target Surgical Extraction to save the land. The one I use is gone. So my plan for Murktide Regent now becomes opponent plays it and I daze. So they have to shift to a 3-mana plan. Do I now daze Molten Collapse to keep my creature in play? And just Grief Murktide? I think so. Target Molten Collapse. Return this. Welcome to Legacy, folks. Would have drawn the other land to play around double daze. Rats. I'm always attacking. Send it. Opponent's at 7. I could try to play this Death Shadow as a creature and just like let it get dazed, but then I'm not guaranteed to be able to answer the Murktide. But despite the fact that I think Death Shadow is good at this point of the game, I think we're just doing this. Alright, Daze, Pyroblast, and the Volk. We know about all that. Now it's just a question of, can I hold this Grief in play for a couple of turns? That is not irrelevant, but not particularly scary either. Send in for 3. Opponent's at 4. I think I will just play this tapped and pass the turn. Alright, I have to keep in mind that Orcish Bowmasters is a thing. Alright, not this time. Opponent goes to 1. I think I'm into this. Alright, opponent reveals a land as their top card, meaning that they are deterministically dead. That was a great round. And we take that one down. So this feels like a hand from like 10 years ago, where you decide whether or not you're willing to keep a hand based on double Street Wraith. Feels like yes. Feels like yes. But, ooh, buddy. So this is very likely to go well as long as I hit a black land in 3 draws. I've missed once, I've missed twice, I have missed 3 times. Strong. I regret nothing. Like, I could sit there and run the math on that, but 17 hits in 3 draws, plus 2 remaining Street Wraiths as auto redraws. I think that's fine. Alright, so, yeah. Yes, Ponder, I'm looking for a Force of Will. That is a Force of Will. No shuffle. As much as I would love to Grief and Reanimate, I think there is some amount of emergency here. Yeah. Violent Outburst, though? Are there rhinos too? I mean, I'll take the creative technique. That one is harder to counter. This is strange to me, because usually this is like 5 and 6 mana cards just cascade, have a chain that basically deterministically ends up winning the game. I don't think I am ever wastelanding my opponent here. That's not what we're about. Alright, so there's the Violent Outburst. Oh, I see. It's for Tybalt's Trickery instead. Got it. I've seen this. So some amount of the time this fizzles, and some amount of the time this accidentally hits an Emrakul. I think I will just Force of Will here and not take that risk. Second Chance goes back. Wasteland goes back. I'll fetch. I think I will grab Watery Grave. And I'm just going to Brainstorm now. There's a small chance that I can hit Grief plus another relevant card. I did not, but my hand's pretty reasonable. This is a thing that my opponent can cast in the not too distant future, which would be a little bit annoying. But that's out. So this is 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 with Taiga. I will play a Giant Murktide Regent, and we'll see how this next turn cycle goes. I can stop 2 things. My opponent is cascading into 2 things. Their 7-5 doesn't get through my 8-8, but would be annoying. Oh wait, is there not blue mana over there? There's not blue mana over there. These are green-green. This is red-red. There's a Trumpeting Carnosaur. Force of Will pitch Daze, I guess? I awkwardly have a Grief right now. Hit for 8. I can keep a Daze in my hand, but the Force of Will is likely to do more as this game continues. Okay, that's the wrong color of mana. Ooh. Is another Violent Outburst. My Daze wouldn't be saving me here. So now my opponent gambles on Tybalt's Trickery and hits Trumpeting Carnosaur. So the chain now begins. My opponent goes in for a Violent Outburst, which can get Tybalt's Trickery. Ooh. They have Call Forth the Storm, which is a double Cascader. Yeah. That's pretty gross. All right. A Reanimate? Does that change anything? I could reanimate a Trumpeting Carnosaur? Let's try that. So now I get to discover 5. I'll cast a Street Wraith without paying its cost. And now my opponent has a Retrace Cascade card. And we'll just continue this chain. Okay, they are out. Now we go back to this portion of the stack. Another Call Forth the Tempest. Alright. This is spicy. The lower stuff on the chain is gone. So hopefully they keep hitting those low costs. Yeah, like this is a miss. It's when they start hitting their Apex Devastators and Emrakuls and such. Oh, fuck, that also does damage. Right. I forgot about that part. Okay, that's another Throes of Chaos. Yeah, we might have dodged the combo aspect and then like lost this game to just the Trumpeting Carnosaur that happened to be in play when everything shook out. This tramples. Damn it. So I could have put Street Wraith in hand, paid 2 life, gone to 1, drawn a card. Orcish Bowmasters does not get me through that. Unfortunate. So I am interested in Hydroblast's Force of Negation. Surgical Extraction isn't dead. I'm interested in Thoughtseize and Grief. In no capacity should I keep Second Chance in my deck. I'm going to keep it in my deck. I just haven't drawn it at the appropriate life total yet. I think I just get rid of Street Wraiths. All that, some deck thinning. Snuff Out's weird. It can answer something like a Trumpeting Carnosaur that sneaks into play. I think I am supposed to try and stop things from hitting play. Orcish Bowmasters isn't super good. Maybe those become Brazen Borrower. Dress Down has text versus Trumpeting Carnosaur. I think that's a little hard to line up properly. One like Street Wraith. This doesn't quite work. Yikes. Deck, please. I don't go to 4. I think I am putting back a land and a Death Shadow and hoping to pull something together that's reasonable. Let's fetch. Grave, yes. Ponder. I'm looking for more ways to lower my life total or ways to disrupt my opponent, and that is none of that. That's almost good. Got a tapped land that I can wasteland to start buying some time. This is not really what I would like to be doing. Like, I want to wasteland once I have pressure, but I do have to respect that my opponent can just start going off with, what is it, Throes of Chaos, Into the Throes of Chaos, whatever that card is called. So we'll just blow up lands. Sure. The colored sources are more valuable than the colorless sources. I probably dodge this turn, but starting next turn, things get scary. So I can keep this and have double Force of Will available. I think I need to work on my own game plan here. Grief, Pitch, Shadow, Reanimate, Grief the following turn is fine. Yeah. We'll go ahead and Grief now. And take what... oh my god. How do I even parse this hand? So my opponent is lacking in mana. I guess I take the Trumpeting Carnosaur, as that can be a removal spell. Alright, I am not really going to get to punch the hole that I would like to have punched with Reanimate. Unless... hold on, maybe I thought about this the wrong way. What if I Reanimate the 7/5 Haster instead? 4 mana. I think this just puts 10 power in play and puts my opponent on a 2-turn clock. I think that's fine. I could put this into my hand to have Force, Pitch, Force. But if my opponent draws a land, they will just Creative Technique 2 turns in a row. So I think I am just casting this and hoping to dodge a land. There's a lot of tapped lands over there. Alright, we dodge. And that's a blue card. That means we don't just lose to demonstrated Creative Technique, which is great. Oh. So this is Cascade. Finding Tybalt's Trickery. I'll just counter that. And we won't let anything get started. This is the 10 power on board. We're going to need to do it again. Do I want to do something like Surgical Extraction when I am on the draw? My opponent has so many things with different names that just start this, so I don't really know that that's correct. I don't know that I can win this game if I keep this in the deck. Like, I don't need an extra turn. I need to not die. And Second Chance's speed here is rough. I think I am going to put these cards in the deck. This gives me an extra way to cycle, an extra black card for Grief. This is an extra black card for Grief, which is better at helping me catch up. I do remove some blue cards for Force, so that's a thing. Not like everything is free here. This is mid. I think Wasteland hands are a lot better than this. I think even a lot of Stalactite Stalker hands are better than this. It's a keep. It's a Wasteland hand. That's a good speed bump. I think I'm going to get rid of the Soul black card here. I'm not 100% sure. I think that's where my head's at. I don't really want to Wasteland that land. Immediately draw a new black card. I think I wait a turn on the Wasteland here. The Ancient Tomb is actively good for me. Alright. We will end of turn Brainstorm, try to smooth things out. Multiple Death Shadows that I can't really use. Without thinking about it, let's just put 2 cards back. I'll redraw 1 immediately. I'm going to try to Brainstorm through this and see if I hit a fetch land. I do. Put back 1 Murktide, 1 Shadow. Fetch, shock. Yes, this is 15. Should have griefed before playing my land. So my opponent can now get to 5 for Creative Technique or Throes of Chaos. I get rid of Creative Technique, as that one has Demonstrate. And it was my goal to attack red mana when it came down, and that's going to be in the form of this Taiga. This is a sorcery. My opponent has some instant that they can cast. I guess I'll force the issue. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can drop force. I can grief and drop Force of Will to play Murktide. I think I need a clock in play. We fell a little bit short of getting some other things open. Okay, so this requires my opponent to top deck 2 different colors. This requires my opponent to top deck 1 color. I guess it has Retrace, so that doesn't actually do any good taking that. So let's put this in graveyard so I can reanimate it, I guess. Yeah. 4-turn clock Murktide Regent is not the best. That is green mana. It is not red mana, which is the color that matters. I mean, I'm playing it. Back for 5. Go to end step. Scale this up. We may or may not have my opponent on a 2-turn clock. That is the colorless mana we knew about already. Margins are tight. Any blue card is fantastic. That is not what I am looking for. My opponent gets another draw. I'll fetch. At this point, I'm just going to take a tapped land and scale up my creature. So this is lethal on board, so one of us is dead. Do you have an untapped red source? You do not have an untapped red source, so we 4-1 this league? Wow. So scoreboard is solid, and I think that just goes to show how strong the general blue-black core is in Legacy right now. Like, you've got these blue-black shadow decks, you've got blue-black Scam, you've got Grixis, Delver. Like, there's a lot of things that follow this general blue-black shell. And if you start dipping into the control decks as well, like this whole Force of Will, Daze, Murktide, Regent stuff is also in the Sultai Beanstalk deck, right? So it's good. A couple different questions here. 1, is Shadow better than some of these other decks? And 2, what was going on with this? Shadow seems fine to play. Like, it dodges some amount of removal. It clocks really hard. I'm not sure how I feel about the Street Wraiths. It's free deck thinning, kind of. But, like, this is an Orcish Bowmaster's world, and I don't really know how I feel about the Street Wraiths in that world. Like, that if you have to pay 3 life to cycle this otherwise largely dead card, that feels very scary to me. I'm not sure that I'd want to be on Street Wraiths if I ran another league. Like, maybe more copies of Bowmasters, maybe some Trolls or things that I would be thinking about. Or the other grief that I took out of the main deck to fit in the copies of Second Chance. Second Chance, we just didn't draw at the appropriate times. And honestly, throughout this league, how many times did I actually attack with Death Shadow? I don't want to say that it's 0, because I probably attacked with a small Death Shadow at some point during the league. But I think I overwhelmingly won matches with Murktide, Grief, Stalactite, Stalker. Maybe that's actually a mark against Death Shadow. Because the thing Death Shadow did in this league most commonly might have been pitch to grief, now that I'm thinking about it more. So if we're not lowering our life total to the point where Death Shadow becomes scary, we're also not lowering our life total to the point where Second Chance is on. We drew Second Chance a handful of times. I almost cast it once to get a Surveil trigger for DRC. But this is a time where we tried and we didn't get it to line up. And again, like I was saying in the deck tech, I think the more copies of Second Chance you play, the worse it is, not the better. Because we were often settling in life totals, like around 8 or something like that, where the Death Shadow was going to be a reasonable size if I drew one, but maybe not to 5. And while I don't like the Street Wraiths, generally speaking, I think for a deck of this general nature, I think if you want Second Chance to work, you probably have to be playing them. Maybe this deck wants Dismember somewhere in the 75. I could see that being reasonable. Regardless, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Folks, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and if you end up needing any cards, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save a little bit on your next order. Alright, have a great day. See ya.